Wait! Elena Rossi's voice cut across the dining room, just as Damian Vale lifted a crystal glass toward his mouth. Every conversation stopped. The plus-size pastry chef stood beside the dessert cart, one hand still dusted with powdered sugar. Her dark hair had come loose from its pins, and a thin line of flour marked one cheek. Damian's bodyguards turned toward her. Victor Hale, the pastry director, frowned. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Elena did not answer him. She moved. Before Damian could take a sip, she struck the glass from his hand. It shattered against the marble floor. 3 guns appeared at once. One guard seized Elena's arm. Another stepped between her and Damian. The room froze. Damian Vale was the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago. No one interrupted his meals. No one touched his glass. No one crossed the distance between his chair and the wall of armed men behind him. Elena had just done all 3. Damian looked at the broken crystal. Then he looked at her. "Explain." Elena swallowed. "The cordial was changed." Victor let out a sharp laugh. "That is cherry cordial. I selected it myself." "No," Elena said. "It is bitter orange." Victor's face tightened. "You knocked a drink from Mr. Vale's hand because you smelled orange?" Elena looked toward Damian's private physician, Dr. Keller, who was seated near the end of the table. "His medication changed last week." The doctor stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. "What did you say?" "Bitter orange can affect how the body processes some heart medicines. I heard you warned the kitchen staff." Victor looked toward the serving table. "That bottle was approved." Dr. Keller took the bottle, checked the label, then smelled the liquid spilled across the white tablecloth. His expression changed. "This is not the bottle on the approved list." The room became even quieter. Damian's eyes remained on Elena. "What would have happened?" The doctor answered carefully. "Possibly dizziness. A dangerous drop in blood pressure. With the dose you take, it could have been worse." Victor stepped forward. "I changed the pairing. Bitter orange works better with the chocolate. I had no idea about the medication." Elena looked at him. "I warned you not to change anything on Mr. Vale's tray." "You are an assistant pastry chef," Victor said. "You do not approve my menus." Damian's voice was calm. "She noticed what you did not." Victor fell silent. The guard still held Elena's arm. Damian looked at the man. "Release her." The guard obeyed. Damian rose from his chair. "Bring her to the kitchen." Elena had worked in the Vale estate for 3 years. Until that night, Damian had never asked her name. The main kitchen was bright, warm, and suddenly too quiet. Victor stood near the ovens with his arms folded. Dr. Keller remained beside Damian. Several cooks had gathered by the sinks, pretending not to listen. Damian faced Elena. "How did you know?" "The smell. That is not enough. Cherry cordial smells rounder, sweeter. Bitter orange has a dry, spicy note at the end." Victor rolled his eyes. "She is making this sound mystical." Elena ignored him. The bottle had already been opened. The service log said it was still sealed. Damian looked toward Victor. "Why did you change it?" "The original pairing was too simple. I wanted something more refined." "You wanted to improve a menu after my doctor approved it. I did not know the risk." "No," Damian said. "You did not ask." Victor's face reddened. Damian turned back to Elena. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years. "As what?" "Pastry assistant." Victor answered before she could continue. "She prepares ingredients, fills pastries, handles cleanup, and assists with finishing." Elena looked at him. Damian noticed. "What else?" She hesitated. "I correct recipes when something goes wrong." Victor gave a humorless smile. "Everyone corrects small mistakes." "Who fixed the wedding cake that split last month?" Damian asked. Victor did not answer. Elena did. "I did." "And the lemon tarts served at the Moretti dinner?" "The curd was overheated. I remade it." Victor had signed his name to both menus. Damian understood without needing more explanation. He looked at Elena. "From now on, you approve everything served with my desserts." Victor stepped forward. "Mr. Vale, with respect, that is my department." Damian's gaze moved to him. "She noticed what you did not." That ended the argument. The following morning, Elena arrived before sunrise. The entire pastry team was already waiting. No one spoke when she entered. Victor had placed 3 items on the central table. 2 identical bottles of vanilla, 2 trays of dark chocolate, and a sealed bag of almond flour. Damian stood near the coffee machine. "You wanted to test me," Elena said. "I wanted confirmation." Victor smiled faintly. Elena opened the first bottle of vanilla and smelled it once, then the second. "This one is real extract. This one was diluted with artificial flavoring." A pantry worker shifted nervously. Victor pointed toward the chocolate. Elena broke a piece from each tray. The first batch was stored properly. The second was kept too warm, then cooled too quickly. "They taste the same," one cook said. "They will not melt the same." She held up the almond flour. "This bag absorbed moisture. It will make the cakes heavy." Victor took the bag and checked the date. "It is still within use." Elena pressed a small amount between her fingers. The date does not matter if it was stored beside the steam vents. A junior cook looked toward the floor. Damian noticed. "You moved it?" The young man nodded. "Yesterday. There was no room in dry storage." Victor's confidence faded. Damian looked at Elena. "Do you remember every flavor you have ever tasted?" No. I forget names, birthdays, and where I put my keys." Elena glanced at the second vanilla bottle. "Unfortunately, bad vanilla stays with me forever." Damian laughed. The sound was quiet, but every cook in the kitchen heard it. Victor did not smile. Elena turned toward the work table. She could have thrown the damaged chocolate away. Instead, she melted it into a sauce for the staff meal. She used the almond flour in a recipe that required a heavier texture and saved the artificial vanilla for cleaning tests. Damian watched all of it. A server entered to collect leftover breakfast pastries. "My son loves these," she said softly. Elena placed 2 extra rolls into the box. Victor frowned. "Those were counted. So count them as mine." Damian looked at the box, then at Elena. Her talent had saved him from a dangerous mistake. Her kindness made him curious about the woman behind it. That afternoon, Damian returned unexpectedly and found Elena at the staff table instead of the pastry station. The young server's son, Matteo, was sitting across from her with a school notebook open between them. Elena had shaped leftover dough into small circles. On each one, she had piped a different number of chocolate dots. 3 groups of 4, she said. Matteo counted carefully. 12. Good. Now you may eat the answer. The boy grinned. Damian remained in the doorway. When Matteo left, carrying a paper bag of pastry scraps, Damian asked, "Do you teach every child who enters my kitchen?" "Only the ones who hate fractions." "You used food. Food makes difficult things feel less frightening." Damian looked toward the closed corridor door that led to Sophia's old bakery. "My sister used to say something similar." That restraint stayed with him. The next morning, Damian ate breakfast in the kitchen. He said it was because Elena needed to inspect his food. No one believed that explanation for long. He arrived before the staff meal and sat at the small table near the ovens. Elena placed a plate in front of him. He reached for a pastry. She slapped his hand lightly with a folded towel. "It is not finished. It appears finished. It needs glaze. It has fruit. That is not the same thing." Damian looked at the pastry, then at her. "I have men who fear disappointing me. They should try underbaking a tart." A smile touched his mouth. The following day, he brought her coffee. She tasted it and made a face. "How much sugar did you use?" 2 spoons. Those were serving spoons. "I was not given precise instructions. You run half the city." Apparently not its coffee. His coffee improved slowly. Their conversations did too. At first, Elena called him Mr. Vale, then Damian when no guards were nearby. At first, he called her pastry chef, then Elena. He began to notice the way Victor assigned her the least visible tasks. She created fillings, corrected temperatures, and repaired decoration errors. Yet, another person carried each dessert into the dining room. Damian requested the internal menus. Elena's name appeared nowhere. The next afternoon, he ordered every pastry to carry the name of the person who created it. Victor objected. Damian did not raise his voice. "Is there a reason her work should carry yours?" Victor said nothing. For the first time, Elena saw her name printed beneath a dessert she had developed. The new rule changed more than the menus. Junior cooks began bringing Elena questions they had once hidden from Victor. A young woman named Claire admitted she had ruined 3 batches of caramel because she was afraid to ask for help. Elena showed her how to listen for the change in the boiling sugar instead of staring only at the thermometer. Victor watched from the far side of the kitchen. "You are creating dependence," he said. "I am teaching. They should learn through discipline. They should learn without being humiliated." Damian had entered without either of them noticing. Victor straightened. Elena expected Damian to support the director who had served his family for years. Instead, he looked at Claire. "Did you learn?" "Yes, sir." "Then continue." Victor walked away with his mouth set in a hard line. Elena glanced toward Damian. "You enjoy appearing at inconvenient moments. I find people more honest when they do not expect me. That sounds suspiciously like spying." His expression shifted, almost too briefly to notice. At the time, Elena did not understand why. She stared at the printed menu longer than she wanted anyone to notice. Damian noticed anyway. "Does recognition make you uncomfortable?" "It makes me suspicious." "Why?" "Because people usually place a compliment before an insult." He waited. Elena wiped flour from the counter. "You are talented, but customers prefer someone slimmer in front. You are pretty for a woman your size. You work hard, but you do not have the right image." Damian's expression became still. "There is no but." Elena looked away. He moved closer. "Why do you stand behind everyone in staff photographs? People like me better when I make beautiful things and stay out of the picture." Then they have been looking at the wrong thing. She tried to laugh it off, but the words followed her for the rest of the day. Damian kept returning. Some mornings he sat in silence while she worked. Other mornings he stole pieces of pastry before they cooled. Elena learned that he disliked cinnamon but pretended otherwise because his late sister had loved it. He learned that Elena hummed when she was calm and stopped when anyone entered the room. One night, he found her asleep at the table with her head beside an open recipe book. He covered her with his coat. When Elena woke, the kitchen was empty. The coat smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. She folded it carefully and returned it the next morning. "You left this." "I know. Half the staff thinks I stole it." "Did you?" "It would fit over 2 of Victor's egos." Damian's mouth moved. Elena placed the coat on the counter. "You do not have to be kind because I stopped you drinking that cordial. I am rarely accused of kindness. You covered me while I was sleeping. You were cold." She looked down. Damian studied her. "You do not trust kindness unless you earn it." That sounds expensive coming from a man with a private physician. It was an observation, and a very dramatic one. "You did not deny it." She reached for a tray. "You should leave before I start believing you." Damian took his coat. "I think that is why I keep returning." At the end of the kitchen corridor stood a narrow wooden door. Elena had passed it for years. No one opened it. One afternoon, she noticed the old sign hanging above it, "Sophia's table." Damian found her standing there. "You should not be here. I work 10 steps away." "You know what I mean." Elena looked at the locked door. "The wood is swelling. The room needs air." His jaw tightened. "Leave it." She did not touch the handle. Was it hers? Damian remained silent. Elena waited. "My sister opened it before our family became powerful," he said at last. "She wanted a place where anyone could sit." "What happened?" "She became ill, and after she died, I closed it." Elena looked at the faded sign. "Because you wanted to preserve it?" "Yes. The flour will spoil. The molds will rust. The wood will split." He looked at her sharply. "Do you want to preserve it or punish it?" For several seconds, Damian said nothing. Then he unlocked the door. The old bakery was smaller than Elena expected. A wooden counter stood near the front window. Mismatched cake molds filled one shelf. Children's drawings covered part of the wall. There were no gold fixtures or imported ovens. Only a warm room that had once been loved. Damian walked inside as though entering a place that might reject him. "Sophia made cakes for a children's home nearby," he said. "She hated the idea that our kitchen served men who could buy anything while children a mile away had nothing sweet." Elena touched none of the objects. "She sounds difficult." She was. "Good." Damian almost smiled. Elena opened a window. Fresh air moved through the room. She wiped one corner of the counter. Would it hurt more if this room disappeared? Damian looked around. No. It was the first honest answer he had given her about Sophia. Over the following days, Elena cleaned the bakery carefully. Cleaning the room became a quiet ritual. Elena washed the old jars and labeled the ingredients that could still be saved. Damian repaired a loose shelf with more determination than skill. When the shelf tilted, Elena placed both hands on her hips. You command hundreds of men. I do. And not one of them taught you how to use a level? I usually command men who know how. She took the tool from him and showed him the bubble in the center. Damian tried again. This time the shelf held straight. He looked strangely pleased. Elena understood then that Sophia's bakery had given him something his empire never did. Work that could not be completed by issuing an order. On another evening, they found a stack of unpaid receipts marked with Sophia's handwriting. No charge. Birthday. No charge. Mother lost her job. No charge. First day at school. Damian ran one finger across the faded ink. She never told me how much she gave away. Would you have stopped her? I would have paid every bill. That is not the same thing. He looked at Elena. No, it is not. Sophia had offered people dignity without making them feel indebted. Damian had spent his life solving problems with money and obedience. For the first time, he began to see why those solutions had never made his home feel warm. Damian helped when no one else was watching. They found an old tin recipe box beneath the counter. Inside were cards covered with Sophia's handwriting. One recipe caught Damian's attention: pear and honey tart. She made this every year on my birthday. Do you remember the taste? Not exactly. Elena looked at the incomplete instructions. Then we try. The first tart failed. The crust was too hard. The pears became soft before the pastry browned. The honey overwhelmed the butter. Elena stared at it in frustration. I should have understood the balance. Damian cut a slice. You are not serving that. He ate it. She watched his face. Well, Sophia's first attempts were worse. You are lying. I am protecting the dead. Elena laughed despite herself. They tried again. Damian remembered his sister adding salt directly to the pears, though the recipe did not mention it. Elena reduced the honey and changed the baking temperature. The second tart was still imperfect. But when Damian tasted it, he became quiet. Elena sat beside him. I thought if I stopped tasting it, I would stop missing her, he said. Did it work? No. She did not tell him to move on. She stayed until he finished the slice. The old bakery became their private place. Damian brought down photographs, receipts, and a small bell that once hung over the door. Elena learned that Sophia had charged wealthy customers full price and quietly used the money to feed children. Damian learned that Elena had once worked in a public bakery where the owner kept her in the back room. He said I was talented, she told him. But my body did not fit the image he wanted customers to see. Damian's expression hardened. I noticed you before I knew what you could do. Why? Because you knocked a glass from my hand while 20 men reached for their guns. That does make an impression. He stepped closer. Flour marked her cheek. Damian brushed it away with his thumb. Elena did not move. You make people obey you, she said softly. Yes. But Sophia made them feel welcome. His hand remained against her face. I do not know how to do that. You are learning. How? You keep bringing terrible coffee. He kissed her. The kiss was slow, careful, and nothing like the man the rest of Chicago feared. When he pulled away, Elena's hands were resting against his chest. No guards stood outside. No one needed saving. For a moment, Damian was only a man standing in his sister's old bakery with a woman who had made the room feel alive again. They remained in the bakery long after the kiss. Damian sat on the counter while Elena arranged recipe cards into neat groups. The silence between them no longer felt guarded. What happens tomorrow? She asked. I bring coffee. That is not what I meant. He looked at her. I do not know. Elena appreciated the answer more than a promise. I will not become a secret hidden in this room, she said. You will not. And I will not be treated as a reward because I saved you. You are not. Then what am I? Damian considered the question. A woman I want beside me when no one is watching. Elena's chest tightened. That answer was almost good. Almost? You still have to learn coffee. He leaned down and kissed her again, softer this time. Neither of them knew that the next day would test whether the honesty of that room could survive outside it. The next afternoon, Elena entered Damian's office to return a menu. A folder lay open on his desk. Her name was printed across the top. She stopped. Inside were records from every bakery where she had worked, her financial history, her family members, statements from former employers. Damian entered behind her. Elena turned. "What is this?" His eyes moved to the folder. "An investigation. You investigated me. After the cordial incident. You knew where I worked before, why I left, my family's debts. Yes. How long?" "The investigation ended weeks ago. That is not what I asked." Damian closed the office door. "At first, I did not know whether you saved me or knew the glass had been changed because you were involved. And after? After, I knew you were not involved. When?" He hesitated. Elena laughed once without humor. "You let me believe you were learning who I was while you already had my life inside a folder. What happened between us was real. How am I supposed to know where the investigation ended and the real part began?" Damian stepped toward her. "Elena?" "No." He stopped. She looked at the folder again. "All those mornings. Every question. Was I a woman you wanted to know or a suspect you wanted to understand? At first, both." The honesty hurt more than a lie. Elena placed the menu on his desk. "You do not know how to care for people without controlling them." Damian's expression changed. She continued. "You protected yourself by learning everything about me while asking me to trust whatever you chose to reveal. You are right." Elena had expected anger. The agreement left her unsteady. Damian did not block the door. "You are right to leave," he said. "But I hope being right does not mean this is the last time I see you." Elena walked out before he could see her cry. Without Elena, the kitchen returned to Victor's control. The Vale family planned a small dinner to remember Sophia. Children from the home she once supported would attend. Victor replaced Sophia's pear and honey tart with his own version. He added white chocolate, imported honey, and gold decoration. The tart was flawless. It was also nothing like Sophia. Rosa, the elderly housekeeper who had known Sophia, called Elena. "I am not asking you to return for Damian," Rosa said. "I am asking because the children remember that tart." Elena closed her eyes. Did Victor change it? He said important guests deserve something more elegant. Elena returned to the estate before dessert. She entered through the kitchen, not the front hall. Victor stared at her. "You no longer work here." "I know. Then leave." Elena looked at the tart. It was beautiful enough for a magazine cover. "Do not serve it." Victor smiled. "There is nothing wrong with it. I did not say it was bad." "Then what are you claiming?" "It tastes expensive." Victor spread his hands. "These guests are important." Elena looked toward the doorway, where several children waited beside Rosa. Sophia's tart was never meant to make anyone feel poor. Victor laughed. "You think sentiment matters more than technique?" "No, I think technique should serve the reason a recipe exists." Damian entered. Victor straightened. "Mr. Vale, she has returned without permission." Damian looked at Elena. "Why should the tart not be served?" She answered him, not Victor. "Sophia used local pears because the children could find them. She used mild honey, so the tart was not too sweet. She folded the crust by hand because she wanted them to learn it at home." Victor shook his head. "There is no proof." Damian left the room. He returned carrying the old tin recipe box. Inside, beneath the pear tart card, was a smaller piece of paper. Damian read it aloud. "Never make this tart too beautiful to share." The kitchen fell silent. Victor's version had better ingredients. Elena understood the purpose. Damian looked at Victor. "Return every recipe you signed that she created." Victor's face lost color. "Sir, return her work. Correct the records. Then leave my kitchen." Victor removed his jacket and placed it on the table. Damian did not make a speech about Elena. He looked at the staff. "She does not belong to my kitchen unless she chooses to." After dinner, Elena went to Sophia's old bakery. Damian was waiting beside the wooden counter. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Yes, I had reason to investigate the incident." "You did." "I had no right to continue holding your life in a file without telling you." "No." He accepted each answer. I began caring about you, and still acted as if caring gave me permission to know everything. Elena looked at him. That is not trust. I know. Damian placed a set of papers on the counter. Elena did not touch them. What are those? Plans to reopen Sophia's table. She glanced down. A proposed name appeared at the top. Sophia and Elena's table. Elena looked up sharply. I am not replacing your sister. I am not asking you to. He explained the agreement. Elena would be an independent partner. She would choose the menu, hire the staff, and run classes for children. The bakery would not serve Vale business unless she agreed. Damian would have no authority over her recipes or employees. A bakery cannot repair trust, Elena said. No. Money cannot either. No. Then why offer this? Because your work should belong to you, whether you forgive me or not. Elena studied him. You would really let me make decisions in a place connected to Sophia? That is the point. Damian's voice softened. I kept the room closed because I believed control protected the memory. You showed me that a locked room only teaches love to become grief. Elena looked toward the drawings on the wall. And us? I do not know how to repair us quickly. Good. He raised an eyebrow. Quick repairs are usually bad ones. A small smile appeared on his face. Elena picked up the papers. I want conditions. Name them. You do not change a recipe without asking. Agreed. You do not send security to frighten my suppliers. Agreed. You do not investigate me again without telling me. Damian paused. Agreed. And you learn to make coffee. That condition may be unreasonable. Elena laughed. It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. 3 months later, Sophia and Elena's table opened its doors. The old drawings remained on one wall. New ones soon surrounded them. Elena's name appeared on the sign, the menus, and the pastry boxes. Not beneath Sophia's, beside it. She no longer stepped behind the staff when photographs were taken. Damian visited before opening hours. He did not bring guards into the kitchen. Elena taught him to fold tart edges, whip cream, and avoid burning caramel. He remained terrible at all three. One evening, after the final customer left, Damian lifted a glass of cordial Elena had selected for a new dessert. He stopped before drinking. Then he held the glass toward her. Do I have permission? Elena smelled it. She tasted one drop. Damian waited. Now you do. He drank and sat beside her at the counter. No guns appeared. No room froze in fear. Elena had not returned because a Mafia boss needed her rare gift. She stayed because Damian had learned to see her without needing a report to explain who she was. And Damian had not reopened the bakery because Elena saved his life. He opened it because she taught him that love did not need to be locked away to remain safe. Outside, the little bell above the door moved in the evening breeze. Inside, Elena leaned against Damian's shoulder. For the first time in years, Sophia's table was full of warmth again. And for the first time in Elena's life, she did not feel she had to disappear behind the beautiful things she made.